It was 7 p.m. in a neighborhood buzzing with fear and confusion. Ogaga, an obedient and bright 8-year-old boy, had not returned home after being sent on a simple errand. His mother, Jane, was inconsolable. She had only asked him to buy a pack of Indomie pasta from a shop just 3 houses away on Eby Street. 7 agonizing hours had passed, yet there was no sign of Ogaga. Friends, neighbors, and relatives gathered in the compound, whispering theories and offering comfort, but no one knew what had happened. Among the concerned crowd was OK, a man with a hidden agenda. When a woman testified that she saw a young boy enter a shop with a man and identified the shop as belonging to OK's wife, Dorcas, OK's heart raced. He rushed home to warn Dorcas and quickly fabricated a story. Soon after, Ogaga's distraught parents, Jane and her husband, Orobosa, came knocking. Without exchanging pleasantries, Orobosa demanded answers. Dorcas, calm and composed, denied knowing Ogaga and initially claimed no one matching his description had visited her shop. But after a dramatic pause, she shared a detail. She had seen Freeman, a mechanic and former tenant of theirs, walking with a boy who resembled Ogaga. This revelation wasn't innocent. OK and Dorcas had a score to settle with Freeman. He had won a court case against them after being served an abrupt quit notice, forcing them to allow him 6 rent-free months before vacating their property. Though Freeman had since moved out, OK and Dorcas still burned with resentment. Seizing the chance to get even, they twisted the truth, falsely implicating Freeman in Ogaga's disappearance. Determined to find their son and convinced by Dorcas's story, Jane and Orobosa had Freeman arrested within the hour. They also announced Ogaga's disappearance on the radio, desperate for any information. Meanwhile, the truth was far more sinister. Ogaga's journey had started innocently at noon. Dressed in a white t-shirt and navy blue shorts with white stripes and yellow slippers on his feet, he joyfully ran toward Mama Ebi's shop. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice call his name. It was Papa ND, a man known in the neighborhood for buying treats for children, but whose home or past no one really knew. Ogaga greeted him warmly. When Papa ND offered to buy him a larger pack of Indomie and bobo juice to go with it, Ogaga hesitated, but the promise of the sugary drink was too tempting. He agreed and followed. Papa ND was a muscular man in his late 40s, towering over the young boy. As they passed Eby Street, Ogaga pointed out that Mama Ebi sold bobo too, hinting he should turn back. But Papa ND gently placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder, guiding him forward with a false sense of comfort. His plan was methodical and terrifying. They walked past the familiar streets and turned onto Batata Street, a known slum populated by criminals. Stopping at a roadside shop, Papa ND bought 2 cans of bobo. He began drinking one, and while Ogaga watched, he slipped a drug-laced can from his pocket and swapped it for the other. "Take, my boy," he said kindly, handing the tampered drink to Ogaga. Unaware of the danger, Ogaga smiled as he took the juice. To bystanders, the scene was nothing unusual, just a father and son sharing a moment. That's exactly what Papa ND wanted. His calm demeanor masked a pounding heart. He knew if he were caught, the consequences would be deadly. Back in the neighborhood, OK felt triumphant. He whispered to Dorcas, "With this, I'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone." Dorcas asked how. "Don't worry," he replied, "just trust me." The trap had been set. But the story wasn't over, and the fate of little Ogaga still hung in the balance. Would he drink the drugged bobo? Would someone intervene in time, or had Papa ND's sinister plan succeeded under the guise of kindness. The night crept on with more questions than answers, and the shadows of betrayal, revenge, and a child's innocence loomed heavily over the neighborhood. Papa ND, a man with sinister motives, carried young Ogaga on his shoulders through a slum called Alele. Ogaga had unknowingly consumed a drugged bobo juice and had fallen asleep. Papa ND's mission was urgent. He had to get Ogaga out of the area before anyone noticed the boy was missing. Avoiding eye contact with the slum's residents and moving swiftly past tarpaulin-built houses, he made his way toward a path leading out to a major street. As he approached safety, he was unexpectedly confronted by a local man named OK, who emerged from a local Ogogoro gin joint. OK, suspicious of Papa ND's story about carrying a sick niece, knew that Ogaga was a boy and smelled something foul. To throw OK off and potentially bribe him into silence, Papa ND promised to discuss a deal with him over the weekend. Once on the street, Papa ND rushed to his car parked near an uncompleted building. He placed Ogaga in the back seat and drove off toward his final destination, a shrine deep within a forest. If accepted for a ritual by the oracle, Ogaga's life would be exchanged for Papa ND's financial gain, a promised reward of 3 million naira. However, there was a condition. The oracle would only accept someone fully conscious and sound. Therefore, Papa ND needed Ogaga to fully recover from the drug. After a long journey through towns and a dense forest, Papa ND reached his hidden hut, made of sticks and a grass roof. He placed Ogaga on a cloth on the floor and began eating from a briefcase containing bread and fried fish. He estimated it would take about 20 hours for the drug to wear off. Though he momentarily reflected on how Ogaga's family might be reacting to the disappearance, he quickly shut out the thought, consumed by his selfish goal. By the next afternoon, Ogaga awoke briefly to eat the yam and vegetables Papa ND had prepared using crops he grew nearby. After another nap, he fully regained consciousness by 6:30 p.m. Ogaga, confused and scared, asked questions. "Why are we here? Where's my mummy?" Papa ND responded with a fabricated story about a war in Wari and claimed Ogaga's family had fled. Ogaga, sensing deception, burst into tears and demanded to go home. To strengthen his lie, Papa ND pretended to call his wife, putting on a show of sorrow, but Ogaga wasn't fooled. When Ogaga offered to recite his mother's phone number, Papa ND panicked and claimed he had no airtime. Ogaga accused him of lying and tried to grab the phone. Enraged, Papa ND slapped him and began beating him. At that moment, a masked man with a cutlass arrived, ordering Papa ND to release the boy. Frightened, Papa ND fled the hut. The masked man approached Ogaga and told him he had come to rescue him. Holding his hand, they began fleeing together. However, Papa ND, realizing the consequences if they escaped, returned to the hut, grabbed a pistol and cutlass, and chased after them. He threatened to shoot both the rescuer and Ogaga. The rescuer remained calm, seemingly protected by charms. A violent fight ensued between the two men, with their cutlasses clashing repeatedly. Amid the chaos, Ogaga fled again. Both men chased after him, and though Papa ND caught him briefly, the fight resumed, giving Ogaga another chance to escape. Eventually, the rescuer caught Ogaga again. The fight paused, and the two men confronted each other. When Papa ND demanded both the boy and the man's life, the masked man countered by offering to hand over Ogaga in exchange for a share of the ritual money. This stunned Papa ND. Then came the ultimate shock. The man removed his mask to reveal he was OK, the same man from the Ogogoro joint. With this revelation, everything became clear. Oke had seen through the lies and deceit from the start and had followed Papa ND to save the child. For Ogaga, the sight of the fight and the mask's removal confirmed the horrifying reality. He had narrowly escaped a brutal death, meant for ritual sacrifice. Ogaga's ordeal begins in captivity. His hands and legs are tightly bound, his mouth gagged, and a cloth covers his eyes to prevent him from recognizing his location. Papa ND carries him on his shoulder, trekking through a rough and bushy path towards a shrine deep in the forest. The purpose is sinister. If the oracle at the shrine approves, Ogaga will be sacrificed in a ritual. Papa ND, who has already sold 6 children for rituals over 4 years, eagerly anticipates another big payout. After an exhausting hour and a half of walking, they pause for rest. Though Oke offers to help carry the boy, Papa ND refuses, mistrusting him. Upon arrival at the shrine around 8:30 p.m., the priest consults the oracle, who confirms Ogaga is suitable for sacrifice. The priest immediately contacts a client eager to buy a child for ritual purposes. However, something strange happens. Ogaga starts lifting his head, blinking and muttering through the gag. The priest, puzzled, asks Papa ND to remove the gag, and Ogaga takes the opportunity to cry out, "Jehovah, please save me." His cries disturb the priest, who immediately calls off the ritual, suspecting spiritual interference. Disappointed and furious, Papa ND takes Ogaga away from the shrine, dragging him roughly through the bush. As they walk, Oke tries to lighten the mood, making sarcastic comments about the failed deal. He even accuses Papa ND of wickedness, asking why he didn't sacrifice his own child. Their conversation grows tense, with both men accusing each other of betrayal and greed. Oke suddenly shifts his tone, threatening to return the boy to his parents and expose Papa ND to the police. But his real motive is self-serving. He's been contracted by another ritualist to deliver a human head, and he plans to trick Papa ND and claim Ogaga's head for himself. Papa ND sees through the lie and warns Oke not to touch the boy. As the two argue, Oke suggests they rest and smoke. Both sit in the dark forest, drinking and smoking bitter gin. Ogaga watches silently, seething with hatred. He hides one of the lighters under his leg, hoping to prevent further smoking as the smell disgusts him. Later, Oke proposes a new plan. He knows someone who might still buy Ogaga, but demands a higher cut of the proceeds. Papa ND agrees, and Oke makes a call to set up the deal at Papa ND's hut. They resume their journey, with Oke now leading the way. But suddenly, Oke screams in pain. He's been bitten by a cobra. He collapses, writhing in agony. Papa ND shines his torch and spots the snake slithering away. Ogaga seizes the moment to suggest first aid. He tells Papa ND to tie Oke's leg near the knee and cut the bite to let the venom bleed out. Surprised at Ogaga's knowledge, Papa ND follows the advice using a razor and cloth from his briefcase. Though grateful for Ogaga's quick thinking, Papa ND is torn between two choices. Should he abandon the ritual plan and rush Oke to the hospital, or use the opportunity to kill Ogaga, harvest his body parts, and then attend to Oke later? The situation leaves Papa ND in deep confusion and panic as the night grows darker and options dwindle. Papa ND was filled with rage and desperation after the chaos that unfolded. His partner Oka was gravely wounded, but despite knowing Oka needed urgent medical attention, Papa ND chose to prioritize a secret deal with a mysterious buyer. He decided to carry Oka on his back to a hut deep in the forest where the transaction would take place. Only after the deal would he consider taking Oka to the hospital, assuming he was still alive. The journey was grueling. Papa ND hadn't carried such weight in years, and he struggled under Oka's heavy body. Along the way, Oka's condition worsened. His speech became faint, and his grip on Papa ND weakened, until finally, close to the hut, he slipped from Papa ND's back and collapsed. Oka died shortly afterward, and Papa ND was left with a mix of exhaustion and guilt. Though angry at himself for causing Oka's death, Papa ND couldn't let it derail his plan. He quickly hid Oka's corpse near the hut, deciding to bury it after completing the deal. Before doing so, he retrieved Oka's phone and any valuable items, realizing that the person they were expecting could call at any moment. If the call came, he would pretend to be Oka. Meanwhile, young Ogaga, who had been kidnapped and dragged into this horrifying ordeal, remained oddly cooperative. He hadn't attempted escape even when Papa ND was distracted by carrying Oka. Ogaga had been praying quietly, resigned to God's will. If it was time for him to die, he accepted it. Still, deep inside, he hoped for a way out. When they arrived at the hut, Papa ND and Ogaga sat down to rest. Almost immediately, Oka's phone rang. The caller ID displayed Ade, the same name Oka had mentioned when arranging the deal. Papa ND answered with a brief hello, trying not to reveal that it wasn't Oka speaking. Ade, on the other end, requested an extra hour before arriving. Papa ND agreed, keeping the response short to avoid being detected. However, Ade was suspicious. He sensed the voice wasn't Oka's and mentioned it to Yakubu, the man seated beside him. Yakubu advised him to call again for confirmation. Ade did, and this time they used the car speaker, making the voice audible enough to analyze. The second call confirmed their suspicions. It was definitely not Oka. Determined to test the imposter, Ade asked about a message he had supposedly sent, a message Papa ND knew nothing about. Caught off guard, Papa ND asked him to remind him of the message. That was the final confirmation for Ade. When pressed further, Papa ND admitted he wasn't Oka. He claimed to be Oka's friend, the owner of the hut, saying Oka had been bitten by a snake and couldn't talk, and that he needed help taking him to the hospital. Though Ade remained skeptical, he didn't challenge the story openly and hung up. Ade and Yakubu debated the situation. Yakubu was uncertain. How could someone who just called now be too weak to talk? Still, they agreed to go forward with the meeting to find out what was really happening. They ensured their weapons, guns and machetes, were ready just in case. As they continued their drive through the night, they encountered a police checkpoint, exchanged greetings with the officers, and were waved through. Back in the hut, both Ogaga and Papa ND had fallen asleep. At least it appeared so. Ogaga lay facing Papa ND, snoring heavily. It was uncertain whether he was genuinely asleep or faking. Papa ND, tired and under the influence of alcohol, had intended to tie up Ogaga before sleeping but decided against it. Convinced the child was fast asleep, he dozed off, snoring loudly. After a while, Ogaga cautiously opened his eyes and observed Papa ND. Once he was sure the man was deeply asleep, Ogaga quietly executed a daring escape plan. He took a torchlight lying near Papa ND and searched for a kerosene container and a piece of cloth. Outside the hut, in a concealed spot, he soaked the cloth in kerosene, used a lighter he had hidden in his pocket, and set it on fire. With the flaming cloth in hand, Ogaga returned to the hut. He poured kerosene directly on the sleeping Papa ND and threw the burning cloth onto him. As Papa ND caught fire, Ogaga grabbed the torch and fled into the night. This chapter showcases a powerful reversal of fate. Despite being a helpless victim for most of the story, Ogaga takes matters into his own hands at the climax, using wit, courage, and opportunity to escape a terrible fate. Papa ND's greed, lies, and cruelty culminate in his own fiery downfall, just as the people he meant to deceive draw closer, suspicious and armed. The stage is set for a dramatic confrontation as the pursuit of truth and justice accelerates. Watch out for Part 5 and see how the story concludes. It was the middle of the night when Papa ND jolted awake, flames licking at his clothes and his hut ablaze. In a frenzy, he tore off his shirt and flung it outside, only to watch it set a nearby shrub on fire. His trousers, still burning, refused to come off. Screaming and stumbling in agony, he drew the attention of Ade and Yakubu, who came running and quickly used shrubs and grass to smother the fire consuming him. "What happened?" they demanded, panic rising in their voices. Lying on his back, groaning in pain, Papa ND gasped, "It's the boy. He set me on fire and ran." "Were you asleep?" Ade asked. "Yes. I thought he was too. I didn't know he was pretending." Papa ND winced. He pointed to the direction Ogaga had fled, begging to be rushed to the hospital. Ade and Yakubu promised to return for him and took off in pursuit. Ogaga, deep in the forest now, had turned off his torchlight as soon as he heard their voices and saw their lights. He crouched silently in the bush, hiding as Ade and Yakubu scoured the area. Ade was barely 10 inches from Ogaga's position, and the boy nearly surrendered, but something held him back, fear, instinct, or fate. As Ade cut through the shrubs with a machete, he whispered, "Should we finish him here or take him to the shrine?" "We don't need him alive," Yakubu answered coldly. Ogaga's heart thudded. He remained completely still, ignoring the sting of mosquitoes. Eventually, the men moved on. Ogaga used the chance to cross to another part of the forest, deeper into the shadows. He found a large tree and quickly climbed it, hiding in the branches. From there, he watched torchlights flash around and heard voices again. Ade and Yakubu had returned. Yakubu's phone rang. "Hello, Babalawo," he answered. After a moment, he turned to Ade. He said, "Bring the boy alive so we can butcher him at the shrine." "Fine by me. Let's just find him," Ade replied. Suddenly, a dry branch snapped and fell. The two men shone their torches upwards. The beam caught Ogaga's eyes. He clutched the tree, terrified, barely managing to stay silent and still. Could the boy be up there? Ade wondered. "Nah, he's too small," Yakubu replied. They shrugged it off and moved away. Ogaga didn't relax until they disappeared toward the burning hut. From his perch, he saw them carry Papa ND toward a car. Once the coast was clear, he climbed down and began to follow the forest track that led toward the main road. His hope was to find help, or at least escape to safety. As he neared the road, the sight of vehicle lights lifted his spirits. He decided to hide in the bush nearby until daylight, but just then, a voice shouted from both sides, "Hold am!" Ogaga ran, but Ade and Yakubu were ready. They ambushed him, covered his face, gagged him, and tied him up. He was shoved into a sack and dumped in the boot of Ade's car, hidden under empty sacks. Their plan was simple. Ade would drive ahead with Ogaga, and Yakubu would follow later, after dropping Papa ND at the hospital. Then they would regroup at the shrine. At the first checkpoint, Ade met familiar officers who waved him down. Confident, he barked at them, refused to open the boot, and sped off. But unknown to him, the officers had alerted another checkpoint ahead. At this second stop, Ade was forced to open his boot. The officers began lifting the sacks. When they insisted on untying the one with Ogaga, Ade made a desperate dash into the bush. He didn't get far. The officers caught him, handcuffed him, and returned to find the sack opened, and Ogaga alive. Weak but conscious, Ogaga recounted everything. When Yakubu arrived, Ogaga immediately recognized him. Both Ade and Yakubu were arrested on the spot. Later, Papa ND was arrested too after treatment. Justice was served, and though Ogaga was exhausted and traumatized, he had survived the terror meant to end his young life.